G'day everyone and welcome back to the final round of the NRS Zwift Esport series with AusCycling. We are with Kate Bates and today's course, well, we're on the Champs-Élysées. How fitting, because at the moment the Tour de France is rolling red hot. The men are going towards the Champs, and then the women on Sunday are going to be going, well, from the Champs. So how you going, Kate? She's going fantastic. And while we just figure out her new microphone, we'll just run through a bit of the course today. Finally, a bit of relief for the sprinters because today's, we'll cross to the results first. Nero Continental in third place for the men's. CCS Cycling, the Canberra setup, are in second place, only just with a 60-point buffer to St George Continental team, which obviously has been dominated by Oliver Jones, who's just been, Ollie Jones has been toweling up the whole competition. So perhaps today is a chance for the sprinters to usurp Ollie, who's been winning solo just about every race this series. As for the
That's
women's,
it. We're
yes,
back.
we're just
I'll leave
talking
it over
about
to you. I was actually just seeing if it worked. I'll let you talk through the women though, Jet.
no worries. Well, with the women, Team Rave are in third place on the standings, and it's really a battle between Inform TMX Make and Butterfield's racing team. There is only 44 points that separate the two, with Butterfield's on top, and they have a strong contingent of riders today. And I actually don't think Inform have any riders on the start line, but perhaps some late ins have come in late, and if they did, well, the pressure's on to score points. But now you're back with us, Kate. What do you think about today's course on the Champs-Élysées?
Oh, I think it's the most perfect fitting course, isn't it? For most of us, I reckon I'm not just speaking for us, Jet, but probably the athletes as well. It's a period of relative sleep deprivation. And by the end of July, everybody's a little bit buggered just from that, just trying to watch. But it's cool that they're racing around there. It's 6 laps, but they do have a 3.2 kilometre run in as well. So that extends it further to about 43 kilometres. Quite opposite, can we say, than what we saw last week. With around 46 kilometres, but all of that climbing. We know from watching the men over the years on the Champs-Élysées on the finishing stage each time that it is sprinters' paradise. And while there does on the profile appear to be a little lump, it's relatively inconsequential given the speed of the rest of the course. So I think this one will go pretty quickly and the attacks will come thick and fast because there's very few who would back themselves in a straight sprint, and I think there is a little bit of opportunity for the brave. What do they say? Fortune favours the brave, and we've certainly seen in the tour so far not a lot of fortune going around for the Aussies and for everybody. Everybody's had a bit of a bad luck run. I mean, on that, I think that if everybody approaches their racing season like we see riders approaching the Tour de France, where you just got to roll with the punches, I think tonight will be okay for them.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm looking forward to see how Ollie Jones in the men's side can conjure a win on a flat course like this. Can he do it all? But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And here we are. We've got a field of 16 in the men's tonight. We've got Ollie Jones, the series leader and leading the way for St George Continental in the bottom left-hand corner in the Zwift Cave, aka the garage. And nice looking field, all sort of bunched up. It's going to be an exciting race.
I thought you were going to say Ollie was a nice looking fella or something based on your little segue there. He's got a good little setup in the pain cave there, doesn't he? I think he's got like a retro headband on and the sweat towel. It feels like we're watching a bit of a 80s music clip there. But it is a good insight because we watch their avatar. My apologies, Ollie. We watch their avatars and we don't really know how they're going. We can look at their metrics and their heart rate, but often that doesn't quite tell the story. So it really does add a lot of value. Big high five to the production team for that. And by production team, I mean Anna Russell, one and herself. She's doing a tremendous job. But it is so important to be able to see the riders and see where they're going. The name that really jumps out to me whenever he's on the start line, Jet, is Mark O'Brien. I feel like whenever he turns up at a Zwift race, everybody kind of resigns themselves to having a hellish go of it. So good to see him out there. And traditionally, you wouldn't necessarily think a sprinter's course would suit him. But that being said, in the Zwift world, everything seems to suit him.
Yeah, that's right. We certainly missed him last week. I would have loved to see how he would go head to head with Ollie Jones on that, the double epic KOM course. But it's nice to see him in the mix today. I'm really excited to see how Partridge Madsen goes. That is Torben from the Canberra cycling setup there in second place. I think he's a big chance to take the victory today because he's got a great kick and he's super strong, as we'd seen. Not the, obviously not the best climber out of the race, but in the top four. And he's got a powerful kick on him as well. So I'm actually hopeful we get a sprint because I feel like the Champs-Élysées, it's got to be a sprint. Just tradition must dictate this race. So perhaps, I don't know, a bit of voodoo, a bit of Champs voodoo will pull this race back to a sprint, even if someone's off the front.
You are a traditionalist. I would not have picked you for that, but I love it. We can see Ben Hill, he's popped into shot there. And it looks like we can also see his headphone cord also hanging down there. I'm not sure if he's listening to us, Jed, or whether he's maybe listening to, some AC/DC or Phantom of the Opera or whatever it is that may G him up. But he's looking pretty cool, calm and collected. We can see his heart rate is only around 132. That's a bit of a coffee pace. So a relatively conservative start across the board for all of the riders because nobody's working too hard at this point. Oh, no, they've just gone past that start-finish line for the first time. So now they are on their first of 6 laps. They've already done that lead-in. And they will definitely be having a little bit of a play around on different parts of the course to see where everybody's getting their natural pressure points. But as we saw last year in the final stage of the Tour Jet, even if it does come down to a sprint, it doesn't mean it's your traditional sprinters that take the win. Of course, Wout van Aert put all the pure sprinters to shame last year. So bit of opportunity for anybody who throws out some watt bombs.
Yeah, that's right. And we obviously get to see, I think they're doing 6 laps today. So it's 6 opportunities to practice the final run into the course, which you go around the final not little, it's a massive roundabout before you come back into that finishing straight. And everyone will be familiar with the finish as we head towards the women's race and check in with them. Everyone will be familiar with the finish. Kate, when you get that on the coverage, you get that awesome side-on shot of the men and then hopefully the women when they race there on Sunday of the sprint. I'm not sure how they do it if they have a camera on it's basically the view we're getting right now on the women's. It's just the side on. You get a really good feel for the speed of the sprint. So the riders will get to approach this roundabout. You can see in the top right-hand side in the map, and they'll get to do that 6 times. So it's an opportunity to get that right, get your positioning right when you hit that final little roundabout. But who we got on board now? We got on board with Emily Fowler, 8 riders today, and no inform make, Kate. It's a big blow.
Well, it is. It's an interesting choice there, but we're seeing a huge attack here from Nicholson, Caitlin Nicholson, that is. She rode really well last week. She's from Butterfield's racing team. She has a pretty good kick on her, but I would say that for the most part, if she could get in a break with somebody that would really suit her, it is a pretty hard slog out there just on your own, especially for such a long race ahead. But you never know. When you're attacking half the time, you're kind of hoping that somebody comes with you. And you can often look over your shoulder and notice that you're all on your Pat Malone, and that can be a bit disappointing. But she does have a little bit of company coming across in McSporran and Fowler, or just McSporran it looks like. So let's see if that happens. But Emily Fowler, she's just cruising along. Look, she looks pretty relaxed actually, despite how high her heart rate is. So isn't that, we'd look at that heart rate and think, oh heavens, she's on struggle street. But actually, we look at her IRL and she looks like she's really in control.
Yeah, I thought that gap would actually blow out because it went quite quickly, up to 4 or 5 seconds. Now that we've got Kayla McSparran and Kayla Nicholson together. Emily Fowler got the bridge across, well, she's almost there, and she's sort of towed Lynch and Rose Vassell with her as well. So they're going to come back together. That was the first attack. Just closing it now, be a little bit hard on this downhill section, but will favour the three riders. But with a group of 8, Kate, how many would you like, I guess, if you're in the break, how many do you think they would need to stay away?
I mean, realistically, if they get a good break of 2 or 3, then that is a fairly safe number, I would think, especially when you look at the team dynamics then of who may be left to chase. Ultimately, I think a break of 1 can succeed on this course, but not this early in the race. I think they need to hold off a little bit. It is the interesting question, when you have got 8 riders on the start line and you do have 40 kilometres of racing, it may be the smart thing to do to just sit in and not do a lot for the first 30 to 35 kilometres. But that would make pretty frustrating racing for some of the riders, especially the ones who don't back themselves in a sprint. So I do think that it's unlikely we're going to get that, but there will be some in absolutely no hurry to make a little big effort, a little bit of an effort, a little big effort. Don't you love it when your English fails as a commentator, Jet? It's like watching, somebody get dropped on a climb. That's what it feels like when you can't speak properly and you're commentating. I'm noticing that some power-ups are getting dropped. They do get a power-up through that start-finish every lap, but it's a fairly early time to start dropping them, and it kind of indicates a little bit of fatigue. Counter-attack going from Rachel Vassell. She is from Step Forward. She has been pretty solid in this 4-race series. We are on the 4th round, of course. And I'm excited to see her progressing as she has over what has been an 8-week series, because it's been every fortnight that they've raced. It's pretty clear that nobody wants to hang around and just see what happens. And her watts per kg up over the 4 to 5 mark consistently indicates she's pretty motivated. She's not looking over her shoulder. I mean, you can't make your avatar look over their shoulder, although that's another request to the game developers. That would be really cool. She's just really going for it. Yeah. So, look, her heart rate is high and her power is pretty steady, but I suppose, as we saw from Emily Fowler, heart rate doesn't necessarily indicate anything, because everybody has a different heart rate range.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how she goes. She's pushing some good power there, just sitting around her sort of 20-minute power as well. And she kind of got away for free there as well. It wasn't a serious, searing attack. She kind of did a 3-4 second effort and then just settled in. So she timed it really well when the pace was low and got a nice speed differential. So it looks like the girls there are just keeping her in check, riding about 3.5 watts per kilo. If they keep doing that, the girls that are chasing, they will bring her back. But it's a good move from Rose, who, she's been good so far. And crossing over to the men's, we'll check in and see how they're going, see if there's any action in this group. It looks like we've got one rider off the front, D. Randell. I'll find out what his first name is, but he's just chipped off the front there. We've got Kobe Henderson as well. It's just a few little splits, couple of gaps appearing. So they're not rolling around. You can see the watts per kilo in the right-hand table, and they're up there. This is a really hard portion of the race, and all the riders, especially these riders back here, like Grierson, who we got on screen, they've got to push now, because once the splits open up and you've got a group of 6 up there, this is where you've got to stomp the pedals and just close it, because you never know. Once you split and you lose it, It's so hard to get back on the wheel. You can see Josiah there. He's working really hard. It's that worst period where you're not quite in the draft, and we'll see him maybe just relax a little bit now. Yep, takes a drink as his avatar gets into the bunch. Someone has attacked. It's Ivan Bennett as well. He's gone off the front. Very similar to what we saw with Rose. So a bit of a counter, and he's away now for NCR. I guess that's Nero Continental Racing. Not sure about wearing the TT lid in a road race, but I mean, if you can do it, then.
Well, I understand that it's all neutralised in the back end in terms of performance, so it doesn't really matter what they choose.
Well,
it will all perform. Yeah, but I think that makes it worse then, that he chose this not. He didn't say like, well, look, I'll look like a little bit funny. I'm not going to use any more derogatory terms than that. Fashion-wise, but it's fast. He chose this for fashion, so there you go. Which would indicate to me, Jet, that perhaps Bennett has some triathlete in him. That would excuse it, perhaps. Although he's got long socks. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Now, of the power-ups we can see, the power-ups that are most useful today, I think on a flat course like this, you want to also be using it in the sprint, would probably be the aero power-up. I think using the aero power-up in the final 150 to 200 metres when you're opening up your sprint is probably going to be the best choice of tactics. If you've got a good kick on you, it gives you the aero boost, means you're running a bit faster, and if you like to hit out the sprint from the front, that is a good option. So if the riders don't get the right power up, they'll just get rid of it. So they drop it here, they go under the banner, and they'll get another one, and you just get rid of it. Or you can hold on to it if you get the right one, and then you don't need to play it until the sprint. But getting the little overhead shot and a bit of a demonstration of the graphics in Zwift, getting pretty good, I have to say. And how about this?
I don't know what that was.
That's a solar flare. We're about to go in. This is what,
indeed.
Of the earth. This is what it's like. And we've got Partridge Mudson, Jones, O'Brien, Ben Hill all running away from the sun, and Ivan Bennett getting across as well. And it's it's quite a view.
It is quite a view. The riders can't see that, I guess. They if you notice, a lot of them dropped their power ups heading into that start finish line so that they could get a chance at getting another one. It also went at the same time as we saw some massive numbers from O'Brien and Jones and Hill. They all went into the orange to try and make a break. Now that hasn't accounted for anything, which that in itself I find interesting, that they're making the big moves, getting little gaps, but it all does roll together very quickly. Also a shout out to Josiah Grierson, who got back on but is now struggling a little bit off the back. Come on, young man, you're doing a tremendous job. So sending a little bit of support to him. He's just keeping a nice steady pace, but certainly not as easy on your own as it is in the lovely draft of a bunch, and that's what we're looking at here. We do have one solo rider off the front. Reardon has taken the opportunity to jump off the front when the others came back. He's maintaining a pretty high watts per kg, but they are on a slight descent, so that gap won't open up as much as it will when it flattens out and tips up a little bit. So if he can keep it going, that gap might open a little bit. 2 seconds at the moment. I don't think anybody's going to be too concerned about that in this chasing bunch.
Yeah, absolutely. Remember that Connor Reardon's a teammate of Ollie Jones, so they're leading the classification for the NRS in this series. This is the final race. They're leading by about 70 points, so it's pretty close. So I think Connor Reardon's going to be a really good foil for obviously their top rider, Ollie Jones, so he can sit in the bunch here and rely on the Canberra cycling CCS Canberra set up to chase this down. So I think we'll see Partridge Martin, Ben Hill, the ones that will be chasing this one down, and Cameron Roberts as well, who are also in that team. So they'll be leading the chase, I think, with Bennett is also getting involved from Nero, who are in third. So the onus is on them to chase, as we see Dan from Nam, or at least a lookalike as well. Someone's done the laser challenge there with the new laser helmet. But yeah,
I thought you
it's
meant the hair. I'm like, it doesn't look like
well,
he's
yeah,
had
that's
any
Dan from
laser, and
Nam.
it's the hair.
Yeah, it's the graphics are getting better. It's like Sims PS2 style. But Mike O'Brien's now responding. He's the man that is riding for. Well, who's he riding for? Inform, and he's also joined the Aero Zwift cycling team recently. You can see him in the that's the Aero team kit. But Mark O'Brien now jumping across to Connor Reardon, and this will be interesting because it will really make the other team's chase. And Ollie Jones is responding straight away, so marking O'Brien, and there he is.
Well, we had. I'm going to make a request to Anna if we can get Sam Hill back up on screen, because we had him in the bottom corner a moment ago, and he looked like he was hauling it a little bit, and I'm wondering whether he was preparing for a move. But look, he doesn't look quite as comfortable as what I may have imagined, but also that may be a little bit of a giveaway with style. What he does have. Can we just pause for a moment for a little bit of bike porn for that beautiful time trial bike sitting over his shoulder there? That's quite lovely, I might say. He doesn't have it in game, but lovely bike to have in real life. And it's always good when we see both of the Hill brothers out there. Once again, O'Brien and Jones are into the orange. They keep having these little bursts of acceleration and power.
Yeah, they do. It's not been an easy race, despite a flat or relatively flat course. It's been pretty hard. There's lots of accelerations. We're down to about 10 riders in the front now, and you can see there's always been gaps. And this is O'Brien gone over the top again, a little seated acceleration, and probably a bit more seated to be out of the seat right now. And he's really putting on the power. This is a good time to counter. The last sort of 2 or 3 kilometres has been very, very difficult. Partridge Madsen's up the front there. Sam Hill is there. You can see the Watts now drop off. A chance to attack if anyone else has got a little bit in the tank, but they're all sort of recovering now. It's really kind of like an old school junior criterium. It's just attacks everywhere. And what about the women's race? Look at this, Kate. Rose Vassell is still off the front.
Ooh, this is a big move. I mean, we did discuss whether a solo break was going to be possible, and probably more than that, whether anybody was motivated enough to go in a solo break. But Rose Vassell is doing a tremendous job. And apologies to Rose. I think I called her Rachel earlier. I got a little bit excited. This gap's opened up to 15 seconds. Now, somebody very, very wise in the Zwift esports world once told me that once you have 15 seconds gap in a Zwift break, that you can be pretty much home and hosed. And so look at that, 15 seconds. It's not insignificant, but in saying that, they're only 14 kilometres into the race, so they still have just over 4 laps left still to race. I think what we need to consider is, why aren't the Butterfields ladies getting more organised into a chase? Because they have the numbers back here, and I can't help but feel if they did get together, that gap would come back. Or do you think they're maybe toying with Rose Vassell a little bit, Jet? Just leaving her out there with that gap to waste a little bit of energy, and then, put the hammer down and chase her back. I mean, that would be a little bit risky, but could be.
Yeah, I think they maybe gave Rose a little bit too much of a leash there. She did come on late to the series, the last 2 races, I think. So I'm not sure if they really were aware of how she goes, what kind of engine she's got. Like, they might have saw the gap. Like I said, she got that kind of 4 or 5 seconds for free, and then she's just been sitting on her FTP basically, more or less. So I reckon they might have been a little bit surprised as to the gap going out. I mean, they've got 4 riders there, 3 of which, as you mentioned, are the same team. McSparran, Nicholson, and Fowler. They're working together, but they could be doing more. You know, one person could be going to the front and just sort of lifting to 4.5-ish and then recovering at around 3.5, but they're not really pushing it. And the gap is going out. Rose is stepping on it. But there's still, well, there's about 30, about 36, 37 kilometres to go. So perhaps they're banking on her not being able to hold it, but that's pretty risky.
Yeah, it is risky. Although maybe they've been up late watching the tour, and they're kind of getting in the mode of letting the early break go and then dragging it back. Although we've had a few mixed results with that at the tour, to be honest. I think a few breaks have succeeded where that wasn't necessarily the plan for some of the bigger teams. So proceed with caution, I would say. Cool to have it on this course. It looks, we know that it is, known as a sprinter's course, and we discussed that earlier as well. But that doesn't negate the fact that it's actually still pretty hard racing, especially when you are in a smaller bunch and you can't hide from the virtual wind in any way, shape or form. And we're seeing that both in the men's field and in the women's field. So I think, the biggest factor on the women's side may be whether Rose Vassell is able to continue with that time trial effort and that power. If she's not, then it may not matter so much whether they're chasing hard. She may just be brought back. On the men's side, there's a whole lot of orange, and that's because Mark O'Brien has jumped out of the pack. In hot pursuit is Ollie Jones. You do not want to let Mark O'Brien ever get away solo. And in fact, the bunch and the teams need to really pay attention, because to have O'Brien and Jones out the front, you couldn't get... I mean, there's very few combos this strong, and if you were looking for a combo to match this, there would be 1 or 2 hills involved. So this is bad news for the rest of them. Look at Ollie Jones, honestly. He looks like he's just going for a Sunday coffee ride at this point. So fair to say that they've got a little bit more in the tank, but here comes the bunch, led by Partridge Madsen. And these 3 could also be quite a phenomenal group if they did get away, but I don't think that the bunch will hesitate for even a moment here.
Yeah. Well, there's a little bit of a split back there with Ben Hill, Sam Hill, Cameron Roberts just trying to get back on the downhill, and they will. Heavier riders, they should get across quite easily. But what I noticed just then is as Ollie Jones bridged up to Mark O'Brien, he got his avatar perfectly sitting in the wheel. And while O'Brien was doing 6.2 watts per kilo, which is, it's big power, Ollie has so much experience racing on Zwift as a professional esports racer. He was able to position his avatar right on O'Brien's wheel, and then he knows that he can back down to 4.5 watts per kilo. He was even sitting on 3.8 for a little bit, right in the wheel. So when you're a really experienced Zwifter, you actually get really in tune with how much power you need to put out to keep your avatar in position. And it is that old sort of, the general algorithm of the draft is similar to outside in most circumstances. On flat courses, it's around a 30% drafting benefit. So you can drop your watts around that 20 to 30% mark when you're in the wheel. And sometimes you're in the draft, you can be doing more watts than you need to be without your avatar actually moving. So that was really cool to see his experience as Mark O'Brien goes again. And it's Ollie Jones, the first one to close, perhaps. No, he's off the pedals. It's going to be Partridge Madsen. They're actually letting him go a little bit now. There's a bit of a hesitation there. We don't want that in the bunch. It's kind of weird and closing this gap.
Why?
It's big power, and he's got 2 seconds. Ollie Jones chose not to close this one. Look at, he's almost soft pedaling now, and they're giving him, well, like you said, you don't want to give Mark O'Brien any time at all.
You don't, but Ollie Jones knows that everybody's watching him, and he knows that if he continues to bridge the gap every time, that everyone will just expect him to do that. So I think it is smart for him to let other people, take some responsibility for the chase. But it is very clear that Mark O'Brien is doing a Mark O'Brien, and he will just keep attacking until essentially somebody lets it go, or he kind of breaks the field into pieces and pieces as they just keep trying to chase him. He won't relent. Like, he's kind of known for that. That's his absolute specialty, not just on esports, but in real life he's pretty well known for being one of the hard men out there. He certainly does have a knack in Zwift. He really knows the timing of how to attack and when to attack. And that once he goes, he doesn't just have one attack in him, he has multiple. It's only 4 to 5 seconds at the moment, but that is a significant gap, and it is the biggest the gap has been so far. But if we do look back
look at Ollie now.
At the field, look at these orange numbers. They are the big names: Jones, Partridge, Madsen, the Hill boys. They're the big names that aren't just going to sit back and let him ride away. And in fact, here's Ollie Jones. Not only has he ridden across, he's blown straight past him. Jet, he's on a mission here.
Yeah, big move. I was watching him in the bunch and watching his numbers. What he was doing was he was sitting right back in the bunch, and like that experience I talked about with the drafting earlier, he was doing like 2 watts per kilo, then getting back on the pedals, 4 watts per kilo, but really sitting on. And I think he was letting the gap go out to Mark O'Brien to around 5-6 seconds, and then he used the little riser as they come underneath that bridge to launch off that launch from the bunch and get across, because I think he was backing his sprint in to get across that gap quite easily, because don't forget he's got a huge sprint under the tank, a 15 second sprint over 1,000 watts. He's got a massive kick. So I think Ollie Jones is going to try and use Mark O'Brien as like a free launch pad, basically. Let him get out front and then bridge across solo and hope that no one else can follow him, and then he'll be quite happy to go to the line with Mark O'Brien with his sprint power. But yeah, you can see riders getting dropped here. Ben Hill's sort of just off the back there with Sam. Lionel Maudit's trying to get back on. Roberts is down. Randall's down. So O'Brien, Jones are really pushing on now. Sam Hill is getting amongst it. He's up and about. But the men's race has been absolutely full gas. That's going to be the title for their rides today.
Yeah, absolutely full gas. I think that is a very good way to describe what's going on. If we look back over at what's happening in the women, there's some full gas happening out the front from Rose Vassell, 24 seconds now. It was 15 seconds last time we looked. But we have this group of 4 who are they're working together yet, but I don't know that they're on limit. Emily Fowler, her metrics look quite comfortable, and Sheen herself looks quite comfortable. But are the Butterfields women communicating? Are they talking about this, or are they happy in the overall scheme of the points to just tap it in, the 3 of them? Because that could be something that they're thinking about too.
That's a good point, actually, because they've got who is O'Day Lynch. She is riding for Step Forward, as is Rose, but Step Forward actually aren't even in the top 4. So Butterfield's racing team, they're wrapping up the NRS Esports Series with, well, just sort of consolidating their position right here. Now, they're still chasing, but the gap isn't going down, and Rose's move is kind of the equivalent of, if you can imagine, in the Tour de France in the mountain stage when the GC say we've got Pogacar, Vingegaard, Thomas all together, and maybe someone like Lutsenko is there, or Vlasov, who are 10th, 11th on GC, and it's a mountain stage. So it's kind of the equivalent of Vlasov or Lutsenko attacking, and the GC guys looking at each other and going, well, they're not really a factor for our GC, so we'll let them go. But you know what? I think Rose is actually just riding the wheels off this. She's overpowering those groups, those 4 girls trying to chase.
Well, do you remember the stage of the tour more than a decade ago, where Torhutov took off in the mountains and rode solo to the finish. And they did chase him. They tried to chase him, but he was just on one of those days that it didn't really matter. And that's what we may be seeing from Rose Vassell. Because while BRT can definitely say, well, we've got the overall, it's no biggie, we also do know that they're all pretty tenacious racers, and every victory counts for something. Sorry for a little bit of background noise too there. I've got some small humans who are very interested in the racing going on screen here who ducked into the room, Jet. So we've got some little esports fans sitting up and having their go in the microphone. Rose Vassell has just kept a really consistent pace around that 4 watts per kg, a little bit of a diesel engine. Over on the men's side, it's a different story. It is a yo-yo. It's a very dynamic race, and it's going from being quite fast to a little bit more civilized. They're not really getting in much chance to really get organised. And aside from O'Brien and Jones, there's actually not a lot of attacking going on, and you have to wonder if they've kind of intimidated them, the rest of the field, into just sitting around and letting them dictate.
Yeah, I think so. There's been action for sure. They've just sort of cooled their jets a little bit. They've got 20 k's left to race, and I think the speed of the bunch. Remember, they're travelling at 52 k's an hour. So to really get their speed and break away, they're going to be needing to do like maybe 55 to stay away from this bunch, even though it's smaller. So that takes a lot of power, and perhaps Ollie and Mark are just sort of keeping their powder dry, resetting. And just sort of trying to recover as well. It's an opportunity for the others to attack, but I think they'll also be recovering because it was a pretty hectic start. So there'll be some good power numbers, I'm sure, in the Training Peaks files in the first 20 kilometres, that's for sure. We are seeing a bit of a chase now, more of a conservative chase from the women who are trying to chase down Rose Vassell. I saw Caitlin Nicholson was the first to light it up. And they brought the gap down to 19 seconds, where it was out to 26 seconds earlier. So it was Caitlin who lifted the pace earlier. It has gone up, and I wonder, as Rose will be just battling now, she certainly will be hurting, no doubt about it. She's been away just keeping over 4 watts per kilo for, 36 minutes now, the best part of, and she'll certainly be hurting. So if you see that ticker go down and the gaps start to reduce, it can sap the motivation of being, the woman out in front. But, she's still holding good power, but I think we're going to see that gap come down to around the 14 second mark. And then, I guess we'll just have to wait and see, but it's going back out again.
Well, at what point does she get up? At what point does she watch that gap come back down and think, oh, I've done enough? Because I tend to think, especially watching esports, which is a little bit different, that it's almost a little bit irreversible once it's at about 10 seconds. Unless you're right near the finish, and you're literally running out of time. But you tend to see people, because there's that element in esports that isn't in IRL racing, which is where you don't really get to freewheel at all. So if you were on the actual Champs-Élysées, there's quite a lot of freewheeling that goes on around corners, down through the tunnel, and down the opposing side opposite that start-finishing line. But on the trainer, you don't get that at all. You don't get a dead moment. You don't get a dull watch. And so it can be a little bit more, let's call it impressive, the mushroom cloud that happens. Because I think if you ever go hard enough that you just completely blow up, that's awesome. It might be a bit disappointing if you don't get the outcome you want, but I really respect that and the way people race to do that. So I think that it is a bit different in esports, but Rose Vassell is doing a tremendous job. And if she can just keep at that pace, it may be that chasing group is yo-yoing a bit to come closer, but then drop back out again. And for what we can see so far, she's really maintaining just over 4 watts per kg. She's about to go through that next little sprint banner that is not too far before the start-finish line. She's got 3 laps left to go. She's in a pretty good pace. Let's see if she can keep that up. Over on the men's, again, it's a bit different over there, isn't it, Jet? Like, they're certainly having a little bit more, shall we call it fun? Is that the word?
Well, yeah, I guess so. They'd all be chatting in one line. I mean, all they're missing now is the champagne and the hands around each other, just like the final in the Champs-Élysées, the winning GC team. And they just sort of line up and get a little champagne and then kind of try and balance for the photo. As this rider, nice sunglasses. They kind of look like the Oakley Cliftons. I have the Odyssey version, just saying. But the guy with the visor as well, the Ukraine special shoes for the Tour of Zwift, or Tour of Watopia. I like those. But yeah, they're just cruising now, and I mean, I'm pretty happy about this. I want a feral sprint. That's what I want. Legion of Los Angeles style, but it's going to be. I think this one's going to come down to a kick.
Not just a normal sprint, a feral one.
Well, that's right. On cobbles, on the Champs, it just deserves it. That's what I think. But Ben Hill, it's a real chance to recover now as well. Like, it was such a hard start. Look, they really put the clutch in, 2-3 watts per kilo, and all the other riders, yes, they're probably all fresh enough to launch an attack, but they know that all the other riders have been able to, well, rest as well. So it puts them off. But I'm not seeing Mark O'Brien here, Kate. He has disappeared.
That is concerning. So he has. It must
perhaps
be a power. Well, I'd hope so. I sincerely hope so, rather than him just coming in for the first half to wreak havoc and then sayonara. I don't think he would do that. But that's a bummer. That's really disappointing to see him gone. And Ollie Jones will be missing his little breakaway companion, I think, or perhaps they won't miss him at all.
Well, Patrick Martin's,
yeah,
he miss him. He's saying sayonara, absolutely, or au revoir. I think that's French. As he storms down the back end of the cobbles, the downhill section really
it is French.
Yes. He's got the purple wheels on as well. I like those shoes. Maybe Physiques, or maybe the purple S-Works. I'm not sure what they are. We just sort of zoom their Bonts, of course. They are the Bont Riots. It's a beautiful shoe. And it's been closed. It's closed down, Ben Hill, and he's thrown the cat amongst the pigeons. I wonder, has he started it now? Will we see some more attacks, Kate?
I think we will. I think now that, yes, exactly. I cannot imagine that they will just be sitting around for a sprint. And I suppose that's in part because there's not a lot of names on the start list that are pure sprinters. And if you're not a pure sprinter, sometimes you sprint really well and other times you don't sprint nearly as well as you could on a good day. It's a little bit more hit and miss. So, I mean, I'd love your thoughts on this, Jet, because for me, when I watch a group of quite good riders, but not necessarily dominant sprinters, not taking it into their own hands pre-sprint, that it's always a bit of a curious sprint because nobody's, really 100% sure of what may accelerate. So pretty classy bunch of riders here, but I think that they're going to want to finish on their own terms.
Yeah, absolutely. A sprint with this small of a group, there's 6 riders, so positioning isn't so important as it would be if there was a group of 20 rolling into the line, like we've seen in previous streams that we've covered, as we've seen the solar flare there make an appearance. But the positioning isn't as important, so I think there might be a slower run to the line for this sprint, which will be really interesting because if they do approach the sprint on the final lap at a speed like they're going just now, the acceleration, and so the acceleration becomes the most important factor. So who's got the biggest snap not necessarily maybe the biggest, like a drag race sprint. Usually when it's a fast lead in to the sprint, positioning is really important when there's a bigger group. So usually the pace is a lot higher. So you're doing 6-7 watts per kilo in the final minute before you have to then launch your sprint. So that can sap some of the power out of the guys with a nice kick. So it sort of makes it less of a pure sprint. But when we've got them rolling around like this, sharing gels, it's really comes down to some, who's got that big acceleration, the big snap. So I hope for the sprint we should get the rider Cam and hopefully on Ollie, and we can see just how violent you can be on the trainer with your bicycle.
You're like when you're all in your vibe, you're quite a mood. Well, look, it's all of these words are yes, and these are words that are very often used with cycling descriptions, I suppose. Interesting, Sam Hill, his heart rate is only 132. We know that is nothing too red hot. Just cruising along at this point. It's almost time before the storm. We're just waiting and watching for who might be the first to go. There's got to be an element of not wanting to ride at now a 6 heart rate. I mean, this is almost, they could be reading a book or doing some university study at this kind of pace, but they don't want to be the first way because everybody has freshened up a little bit, and they may feel as though being that first one to move is not going to be the most beneficial one. So let's see who has the best.
Yeah, I guess we'll wait and see.
Longest.
We'll see Sam just cruising there. He's got a decent kick on him as well, but he would have preferred a little bit of a harder race. If Sam Hill wants to win this race, I think he needs to go with a bit of a kilo-style effort and sort of launch maybe just before they go around the giant roundabout that we see. So that's about 2 Ks out. That's what I'd like to see from Sam today. I think he's riding in some good form. And he does have a good kick, but they're all going to be wary of Ollie Jones and Partridge Madsen as well. So I hope to see I think we will see some late flyers in the final sort of 3-4K. There's riders in there, like let's see in this top front. So Ivan Bennett from Continental, Ben Hill is a crafty operator. I think riders like that, Kobe Henderson, they're going to be going for something long range in the last 5 or 6 Ks. So it's going to be really interesting. So it might be a case of closing down a move and then going over the top. So it is a chance if you attack late for all the riders to look at each other, particularly if Ollie Jones is in the bunch. And so still on board here with Sam Hill. He's obviously riding for Continental as well, part of the Zwift Academy, one of the finalists, and so close to actually winning the Zwift Academy as well. He was super strong as well, and perhaps didn't quite get over the line with what they were looking for in the academy in terms of the rider profile. But strong rider nonetheless. And I think he's coming in some good form as well with some key NRS races in real life coming up. But Katie, it's 10 Ks to go. I was just mentioning how we might see a few late attacks in the final 3K.
Well, I love a good late attack. It's actually one of my favourite moves of all time, and I always get quite excited coming into bunch sprints in the big races, just waiting to see who might do it. We've had some really good late attacks in Zwift Community League over the seasons as well, which is pretty cool. But you do have to be it's all about timing in the late attack. And I'm a fan of around the 2 to 3K mark. We do have, as you said, just shy. We've got about 9K left to go now. And so this is really, I think we've entered territory now where they're waiting for late attacks. They're in that in-between now where they're all freshening up nice and well. They haven't been doing a lot for about 8 kilometres. They've been cruising along at this pace. And so now they are just kind of readying themselves to really get stuck into that finale. But exactly, I think, as I said before, who's going to be the first to go? Because usually it's not the first to go that will stick when there is such a small group and they are literally just looking at each other.
Yeah, I can kind of see, I can foresee a move going in the final 3K, and I can see Ollie Jones closing it and no one else being able to close to Ollie, and then Ollie winning over the top. I can honestly see that happen in today's race, especially now that Mark O'Brien's gone, because he kind of looked like the man that could, sort of match him toe for toe in terms of power. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting, and there's a lot of fresh legs just chipping around here in this bunch. But it's been a hard race. There's plenty of guys have been eliminated, and I think it's just cool they're racing on this course, the Champs. It's coming up in a week's time. As we sort of check in with how Rose is going, that gap looks to me like 31 seconds if we swap to the women's side. But it's a special course to race on. I was actually chatting with Kate last night. If any of the Press Room Podcasts fans are listening, I was chatting with Eliza Balsamo, the world champion, and she was saying just how special it was for them to race, or how it will be to race on the Champs. They're all really excited, and especially because their race starts before the men's on Sunday. So while the men are going out and doing the longer loop, the women will be finishing on the Champs. So it's a massive, massive moment for them. And it's cool. We're seeing it right now. And Rose, well, she's channeling her inner Balsamo, or perhaps Lorena Weber's.
Yes. Oh, I love that. That's very cool that you get the best guests on your podcast. Jed, I've got to say, you do exceptionally well to wrangle the get them to relax and speak quite openly. It is going to be a monumental Sunday to have the Tour de France Femme start. I cannot wait for that. It will provide a lot of motivation and inspiration for women, both on bikes and people who just in general are looking for the women to get their equal place in focus. But Rose Vassell, I mean, for all the thoughts of can she hang on, will she hang on, that gap now actually hasn't opened up tremendously. It's not that they've just let her go. It's come back closer, it's gone out further. All in all, Rose continually consistent power. And this chase group is just not organised or perhaps motivated enough to really make that dent that they need to.
Yeah, it is. Rose just simply, I think she overpowered them to get out to that magical plus 15 seconds. It's now over 30. She's really cruising now, but it was a real barnstorming ride, and I would have loved to have seen how she'd go in the first two races as well. But she made the most of a smaller group, and like you said, you could go solo and win on your own with a field size like they had today, and she's certainly on her way to doing that. There's 10Ks remaining. Emily Fowler, Kayla Nicholson, Kayla McSparran, and O'Day Lynch still chasing there, but at the moment they're not gaining any ground. They're losing time, and it's a serious ride too, a really, really big ride as well. I think looking at a Zwift power profile for Rose, she is, so she's, I wouldn't put her in the category of a roller, having not seen her in person, but she's kind of riding it like a roller would. She's got just settling into that diesel pace, like you said, and they haven't been able to catch her. And that's a pretty good feather in your cap when you're riding away from 4 chasing. That must feel pretty good.
Yeah, I reckon it would definitely feel pretty good. And it is the turning point also. Like before, I said, it's a turning point where it comes down to about 10 seconds and maybe you give up the goat. But equally, there's the positive turning point where you get within 10 kilometres of home and think, I can do this. Like, I can definitely hang on to this. And likewise, the chasing bunch thinks, okay, we've been held at this distance for 20 kilometres now. We're not going to catch up. We now have to essentially race for second amongst us. And Rose Vassal will benefit from that.
Absolutely. It's starting to kick off on the men's side now. We're now entering the final lap of this course. They're about to tick over the last little roundabout. This is kind of the running I was talking about as they go around this. It's not a roundabout, it's the Arc de Triomphe, I think it's called, which twice a year the sun sets right in the archway, which is pretty sweet. Maybe I could see it one day. But it's just, starting to get a little bit spicy, Kate Spicy style.
Spicy.
And, they're getting edgy now. This is when you start sort of sitting just above the saddle, getting ready to close gaps. It's getting pretty exciting. Ivan Bennett there lighting it up, and he's chose to attack with 5Ks to go. Ollie Jones snap closing it. Look at that. Orange, all the guys just sort of closing it down, and that's how fresh they were. As soon as Bennett went for Nero, it was closed by Jones, and this is what I was worried about. Jones is closed. Now look at his watts per kilo. Really good, just dropping them down a little bit. Bennett's now cooked. I think that might have been the one move. Ollie Jones goes over the top, but not pressing on. He's waiting a little bit. He knows the others are fresh, and this is not a good moment to attack because it's a downhill, and it certainly favours the bunch chasing you. So I think as they run into this little downhill segment, when it flattens out, we might see the second late attack. But, just under 4Ks to go now, Kate.
I like the word cooked. I think it should be like a technical terminology for,
Well, it is.
The description of any rider. I like it. It is. I don't think that Ollie Jones is quite yet. Otherwise, he would have taken that opportunity to go straight over the top in that attack. So they are playing a solid game of cat and mouse leading in. Bennett has clearly been sent on the march. He's going again. Jones, massive numbers to accelerate up toward him, and that gap is just not getting away. But Bennett can't be the only one to keep those attacks going, because when it's Bennett going, Jones shutting it down, putting the brakes on, we are going to come to the finish in a group of 6 if this continues to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. You could see Ollie close that easily, absolute snap closed, but then backed off straight away. And he kind of gapped the others in closing that gap for the second time. Not a massive gap, but just kind of, closed a little bit. Now, this is the move I was talking about, and he's timed it to perfection. Sam Hill has hit out with under 3Ks to go. There was not an immediate reaction. Now, let's just have a look and see on the rider cam. He's not quite pushing on yet. You can see him. He really rocks and rolls on the left and right-hand side. He could be pushing 7 to 8 watts per kilo in this final run-in. I think he's holding back a touch and just seeing how the bunch responds. It's Partridge Madsen who's on the front trying to bring him back. Ollie Jones sitting in the wheel. Ben Hill is there. But I think Sam will like this, and I think we might see him start to step on the pedals a little bit more. But he just doesn't want to hit out too early because there is 2Ks to go, or just under 3Ks to go. Looks like he's going to get close. Partridge Madsen closing that gap. Ollie Jones, you can see the watts per kilos are starting to just rise up now. Who's going to counter over the top? Has Bennett got another gun or another bullet in the gun, so to speak? And there he goes.
I hope he doesn't have another gun. That would be just awkward if nothing else.
And he's off.
And he's off. Look, Ollie Jones probably on paper has the best kick just in terms of absolute raw power. But Bennett is just not going to accept a bunch kick at all, is he? He is absolutely giving up. Every time they come back, he finds the legs to. And this one has stuck more than the others. There has been some hesitation, and that gap is already at 2 to 3 seconds. Not a big gap, but not insignificant when they're turning this left-hand corner and heading back down toward the Champs-Élysées and toward that finishing line. If there is any more hesitation from that group behind, I say that Ollie Jones flies by in the orange.
Yeah.
He's followed by Hill, Ben Hill, then Sam Hill, and it's just changed very, very quickly. Ollie Jones, not even a second gap, but we can see that he is keeping the Hill brothers from getting any kind of sit or aerodynamic advantage by keeping that gap open, but he's gone early. This is a very big move from him, but a very early move. I've got to say this is shaping up perfectly for Sam Hill. If he can just hold on to Ben Hill's wheel, then I think he's perfectly positioned here. I say that, and then he comes to the front. That changes my mind somewhat.
Yeah, well, it was a big move to close that gap. I thought Patrick Madsen, he used that uphill as a launch pad yet again, and now Sam Hill has turned on the burners. This is the final kilometre. Don't forget about Patrick Madsen, who is just trying to close to these three as well. You got to watch the watts per kilo fall away here, and I think Patrick Madsen is going to get back into the wheels. He's not far out of screen. An aero power up by Ben Hill. He is now launching his sprint. Ollie Jones is in the wheel. We now have two up front. Jones is in the wheel. Look at him use his watts per kilo now, dropping off ever so slightly. There's still 300 Ks to go. There's been some sort of dropout, and that was it.
No, that was it. That was the finish line. Ben Hill. That was a great ride there. I think Ben Hill will. I'll have to get Anna on production to take us back through that for a replay. But in the meantime, we're back over with the women because Rachel Vassal's not too far. Sorry, Rose. Rose Vassal is not too far off the finish now. She is out to nearly a minute's gap, so she's done a sensational job of really consolidating this break, and her power has remained really consistent across this. This is a serious time trial talent. Jet, we must not be paying enough attention, too excited, because we have forgotten, and it is not too late, for the old golden bilby and the honey badger. So, while we're on the women, I don't think we can go past Rose Vassal for the golden bilby. I mean, what are your thoughts? It would be a hard argument.
10 karat gold bilby. That is 100%. That's bilby all day. Rose, a.k.a. the golden bilby, ×2. She's raced twice this NRS season, and she's taken home 2 golden bilbies. That is kind of like taking home 50 arias. So you can't question it. She had the strongest race. She's won by over a minute. Well, she's going to win by over a minute. Really barnstorming ride, and those chasing four, they were chasing, and I think she just basically she overpowered them. It was a really impressive ride and gutsy as well to go solo.
It's 2 on the trot for Rose Vassal, 2 golden bilbies for her. I definitely think that deserves some pineapple lumps from Anna from New Zealand. Over on the honey badger side, what do you think, Jet? I'm going to let you choose the honey badger, and that is the most aggressive, most standout, whatever you'd like to call it, ride in the men's race.
Well, there's a lot of attacks going. Ollie Jones was obviously very active. So was Mark O'Brien. But I really liked the digs from Ivan Bennett. I think his efforts in the final lap, he took 3 big accelerations in that finale. And I think we should be giving it to Ivan Bennett. I think it was a real gutsy performance. So he's the honey badger today. He had claws out. He didn't take the win, but he certainly was the most aggressive.
Yeah, I will pay that too. I think Bennett had an absolutely cracking, solid ride to not give up. The end just went so quickly. We were like, what is going on here? What is happening? So we are awaiting those final results while we do watch Rose Vassell ride in. And then there will be a little bit of a wait for second place. They are now over a minute further back. I think safe to say they have given up the goat a little bit. They are now only racing for second, and Rose Vassell is in a very good position to just cruise it through. But what I love is, even though it's gone out to over a minute or under a minute, it's kind of oscillating around that minute mark at the moment, that Rose Vassell is still really pushing hard. Her heart rate is 180 now. She's still hovering around that 4 watts per kg. She is absolutely committed to putting every watt of power down that she possibly can, all the way to the finish line. And I respect that kind of racing. Week in and week out, she has just been an exceptional talent in this series. So it's always good to find some new esports talent, Jed. I think it's a bit of a privilege of what we do, that we get to watch this talent be nurtured and come through.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good way to tell an ID, actually, because you just get to see the power profiles and sort of what they're capable of as well. So she's essentially just done an hour record attempt, really, because she's just sat on her threshold, and it's a serious ride to be doing after work on a Tuesday. I mean, that's that's a big ride. You just get home and go and do over an hour around that threshold power, and just timing that little feather power up perfectly. It's a big ride. So sort of 270, 260 watts.
I feel like you've got
really
a thing for Tuesdays, Jet. Like, you feel as though Tuesdays should be a recovery day or something. It's like you seem way more impressed with the ride because it happens to be Tuesday, or have I read that wrong?
or that it's an afternoon. I mean, Tuesdays, I think it's National Bunch Ride Day.
This is true. Yes.
But Tuesday afternoon is, well, I mean, that's Netflix when you get home, isn't it? So it's a great ride nonetheless from Rose. And I wonder, the podium, that's going to be interesting. See what kind of sprint we get between the Butterfields racing team and, of course, O'Day Lynch flying the flag for, Step Forward. So it's actually a pretty decent little day out for Step Forward racing.
Yeah, it is in the end. They've had a very good day out, in fact. They will accrue a whole lot of points. Butterfield Racing, I mean, given the numbers, you would think that they would lay down some late-minute attacks to make sure that they weakened the potential threat they had there from Lynch, but they all may be quite exhausted too. Oh, look at your head popping up in the coverage there, Jet, with those glasses, no less. Tell us about those. Heavens. That's how you identified the rider's glasses.
That's right. Just got back from my favourite festival on a Tuesday. Who goes to work these days? But look, I'm a big fan of Oakley's. You can get these in the game, the Oakley radars. Razor blades. We've all seen these. And I just felt inspired. Rose was just riding so strong. I thought it was too hot for me. I had to put these on. The glare from that ride and the solar flare we saw earlier was too much. So I needed to protect my retinas.
The solar flare.
Look at Rose. She's kicking on. 7, 8 watts per kilo to finish. She wasn't happy with doing 1 hour at her threshold. She's then punching in a 7 watts per kilo kick. Incredible. But great win from Rose, and probably win of the series, really. But take us through this sprint, Kate.
Well, look, this is an interesting tactic from the BRT ladies. They are now within about 30 seconds of that finishing line. What they definitely are doing is letting Lynch lead out. Now, if Lynch burns a few efforts here, we can see Fowler has gone, not just her avatar, but her in real life video. She is working hard. Big drop of watts there. She is absolutely flying toward the finish. Overcoming over the top of Nicholson too. That was a tremendous Fowler there. And great to see her sprinting on the trainer like that. There's a lot of riders who really struggle out of the city on the trainer. It is a little bit to a but she did a cracking job there. You know what? They really needed BRT to get second to kind of pin back what happened out the front with Vassal. And they did a pretty good job of it too.
Wow. Yeah, that was
heavens.
A crazy.
I'm sorry, my internet's very good, Jet, so I might have to hand this one.
No, that's okay. No worries. Internet's from internet. But great work by Rose taking out the win. A solo win on a flat course on the Champs. It doesn't get better than that. Probably the rides of this series for the NRS. So well done to Rose. A good effort from Emily as well, taking this second place. And it was a great win. And also on the men's side, we kind of missed the sprint finish. It came so fast, but it was it Ben Hill taking out the victory? Insane ride.
Yeah, I mean, tremendous ride from those guys. Let's take a look at results if we have them, Anna. So Sam Hill taking third, Ollie Jones taking second. What a ride from Ben Hill to overcome the strength of Ollie Jones and the push from Sam Hill, who went a little bit earlier. So great result all on for them, and a really great ride in particular from Ben Hill at the finish there.
Yeah, that was a real smoky. He timed his move really well, and he was one of the riders that wasn't jumping the entire race. He was just covering the moves and often kind of the second or third last rider to get back to the bunch. So he really saved his energy, and perhaps that was why he was able to overcome Ollie and Sam in the sprint. So a pretty smart ride from Ben Hill, who, as we know, Kate, is quite known to be a very crafty rider.
He absolutely is, and I think that he uses esports to really sharpen his skills. And what a tremendous series this has been from AusCycling to put on. Been great to have the support here. We'll take a look at the women's results as well. Of course, we know that Vassal took the win. We spoke about her all day, but Caitlin Nicholson in third. Emily Fowler second with that fantastic sprint finish. And Rose Vassal and Bilby of the last 2 weeks. What a tremendous season from her. She's really stepped up in the esports racing game, Jet, and I think she's a very big name to watch in this space in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a really good talent identification, and I think some of these names we saw chopping off and going nuts here on the Zwift NRS AusCycling Series, I think these are some of the names we're going to be seeing at the Nationals come the Australian summer as well. So really exciting to see some of these names come up, and we know who to look for when the summer of cycling returns in that January area. But I'm very curious to know what is happening with, we're going to go straight across back to us. But Kate, what was some of your favourite moment of this NRS esports series?
Put me on the spot, Jet. Go on. Look, I think that certainly unearthing the talent of Rose has been pretty exciting and wonderful to watch. She has been tremendous, and she has proven that she's really capable, not just in the climbing stages, but also in these flatter ones, which has been pretty impressive, I've got to say. So she takes my overall golden bilby, I think, for the ride, in plural, of the season, and something that I think will stick with me moving forward, because we do more club series coming up on here as well. It's not until the middle of August that there's plenty more opportunities for the riders to go out there and prove show us their mettle.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I really enjoyed the elevation. I was a big fan of the vert in this year's series. Finally, something for the climbers as well. So it was good to see that. And, of course, the Honey Badger and Golden Bilby Awards, two of the most coveted awards of all time, were pretty cool to run through with you, Kate. But, look, you mentioned, the club series is coming up in August, so make sure you look out for that. Riding for your club in any grade, really get amongst this because it's going to become a war of the clubs. WA, we're not represented. So this year, look out. We're coming, Kate, Western Australia, the Republic. And we're bringing, in fact, I might actually be on the ergo at the same time. So I'll just kind of be like pedaling.
Bobbing
Can't wait to see
around.
what
All
you're going
right. All right. Well, we'll look forward to that, Jet. Make sure you wear
to.
those
Yeah.
big shades that we saw you pop up with before.
Yes. Well, it's a good time to sign
Yeah,
off.
they're the
Actually, I've got to
ones.
go and on the corner of my street now. Thanks everyone for tuning in to the NRS Esports coverage. It was great to share it with you again, Kate, and thanks to Anna, the production
Likewise.
mastermind. And
Yes.
we'll
We'll
see
see you soon.
everyone. Yeah, see you all soon.